Mandaramukam Tamraravinde Kshanam Bhaktabhishtavarabhaya Pradakaram Kaupinamatrojvalam Svatmanandarasanubhuti Sarvanavadyangakam Shrimantam Shri Ramaneshwaram Guruvaram Yogasanadhyasitam Dhyayet Shri Ramaneshwaram Dhyayet Shri Ramaneshwaram Dhyayet Shri Ramaneshwaram Hridaya Kuhara Madhye Kevalam Brahmamatram Yahamahamithi Sakshatatmarupena Bhati Hridi Vishamanasasvam Chinvata Machatava Pavana Chalanarodhat Atmanishto Bhavatvam. Namo Ramana. In this Tuesday Self-Enquiry Atma-Vichara session from Ramana Maharshi Center for Learning, we have been meditating on Bhagavan's teaching from the book Years in the Presence of Ramana, My Master. Basically, reminiscences of Sri Mahakrishna Swami, who stayed in Ramana Ashramam with Bhagavan, and before he moved to Brazil and started a Ramana Ashram there. So he has captured his reminiscences in this book, and it has been originally edited by our founder President Sri A.R. Natarajanji. After meditating on this week's question and answer, we have come to the second chapter in the book, which is termed the natural state of being. So in this, the natural state of being, Bhagavan is explaining about the true natural state of perfect happiness. And after reading and meditating on this week's question and answer, we will be having a 20 minutes practice of self-enquiry. Following that, our President Sarada would be contemplating on Ramana Gita. Ramana Gita is again a collection of Bhagavan's teaching, where many devotees of Ganapati Muni and others had put questions to Bhagavan, and Bhagavan had answered them, which Sri Ganapati Muni has captured in the form of Sanskrit verses and is titled Ramana Gita. So Akka would be contemplating on self-enquiry from that book, and finally we will have the concluding prayers to Bhagavan. And this week's question from the second chapter, the questioner is asking Bhagavan, in what way is happiness our natural state? So he is asking in what way that one's own nature is that of happiness. Bhagavan's answer is, perfect happiness is the self. Perfect peace is that of the self. Only this state exists, and we must become conscious of it. And Sri A.R. Natarajanji highlights this part of the sentence. When man understands the happiness rests in the self, all desires are undone. It is the state without ego. It is liberation. Suffering and pleasures treasures are the result of attachment to that which is transitory. This portion A.R. Natarajanji highlights. I'll repeat again. When man understands that happiness rests in the self, all desires are undone. It is the state without ego. It is liberation. Suffering and pleasures are the results of attachment to that which is transitory. Further, Bhagavan continues to answer, pain and happiness alternate. It is necessary to learn how to remain imperturbable, and accept suffering and pain with patience, without being subjugated by either of the two. He who dedicates himself to an activity must do so without being concerned about the results and not let himself be dominated by the pain or pleasure that arises from time to time. Only he who remains indifferent to pain and to pleasure is truly happy. So here Bhagavan very beautifully is presenting us the true state of the self. He is saying perfect happiness is the self. Why is all other kind of happiness imperfect? We may look at it in a different way. Because all of the other things that we experience from our senses, from our mind, intellect, and vasanas, and all the ego, everything is all transitory. It is there for a moment and then it goes away. Whereas the happiness which is unalloyed by anything, which is untouched by anything, no matter what is the external circumstances, if something continues, if one experiences happiness, irrespective of any external or internal conditions, or external condition to put it simple, then that is perfect happiness, because that is the happiness one has touched where there is no disturbance to it 24/7. So Bhagavan is saying such is the nature of the self. It is perfect happiness and it is also perfect peace. So it has to be equipoised to everything, then only it can be said to be in peace. If it is something which goes up or gets disturbed by something, then it cannot be said to be in peace. So Bhagavan is saying because self is perfect peace, therefore it is perfect happiness. Then Bhagavan goes on to say, when this understanding that self is perfect happiness comes to somebody, he says all desires are undone. Because now that such a person, having understood one's own natural state, which is Sat Chit Ananda, pure being, consciousness and happiness, when one recognizes that is one's nature, why would we turn towards mind, intellect, objects? Right now we turn to all of them, to the ego, the mind, the intellect, the body, the senses, and then further various objects in the world. When we go outward like this, we turn to all of them for only one thing, that I want to experience happiness from that, from whatever I am doing. But when one recognizes none of them can give perfect happiness, and the perfect happiness is actually the absence of all of these external movements, when one simply remains in one's own true state, when that understanding comes about, Bhagavan saying the first thing that will happen is one will develop vairagya, dispassion towards everything, because one becomes disinterested with things. He may still eat a food, he may still he or she may possess a body, then continue to do all the things, but they are never looking at these things to ever get them happiness. They know the very nature of these things is there will be pain and there will be pleasure. There will be sometimes when there will be pain and sometimes there will be pleasure. So this is the natural behavior of all these transitory things. Suppose I like masala dosa, so I become very happy and when I get that. But as I start eating it, as I reach to the end of the masala dosa, the last bite, I become a kind of unhappy too, that there is nothing more left. So the happiness and the pleasure are two faces of the same coin. And this is the nature of the transitory things. So when one recognizes that, Bhagavan is saying, one would never pay attention or one would never pursue for the sake of happiness. One may do some activities, but one will not pursue for the sake of happiness. One may not do for the sake of happiness something. But today, we all do something or the other for the sake of happiness. We study so that one day we will get a job, we will be earning money, we will be happy. Then we accumulate assets, land, money, so that we understand there will come a time where this is required, it will double or triple, and that will make me happy. So we do everything, we run towards the objects, we run towards ideas, concepts, looking for happiness. We struggle, we put lot of effort behind those to gain those things. But when one recognizes that the perfect happiness is oneself, and naturally he becomes disinterested in looking for happiness in all this objective pursuit. One may continue to do a perfect jnani, like Bhagavan would continue to cut vegetables, continue to partake in all the activities of cooking and other things, but very clearly there is an understanding that the happiness is of one's own nature, peace is of one's own nature. There is not something that I will cook a wonderful dish and some people will tell me, wow, wonderful dish, and I will become happy. No, there will be no lookout for such things, says Bhagavan here. So therefore, such a person will become without any desires, says Bhagavan. But this is, in a way, we can also look at this knowledge that we have been discussing of happiness being in the self, and therefore one will not have any desires towards the non-self, is also in the Vedanta called as the viveka of knowing what is truth and what is the source of happiness and what is not the source of happiness. But this viveka is still in the realm of mind and intellect. This is again another knowledge. So real experience of peace and happiness is only when completely one puts away all these ideas also, including this viveka, and turns and simply abides in one's own natural state. That is the most important thing. And in that, otherwise, this viveka, that I know what is self, what is not self, is again held by whom? If we inquire, then the answer will be, it is for me. So it is like knowing about something, but it is not like experiencing that very thing. I may know the sweetness of the sugar, but it is not like I am having the sugar and enjoying it. So Bhagavan here is very beautifully telling that though this is viveka, one needs to go and abide in the self and in the true state of liberation where there is no ego. Then suffering and pleasures will be understood to be always transitory, and it will keep alternating. That is when either you become a source of patience, says Bhagavan, because like the earth, on the earth, yesterday I was looking at the teachings of Dattatreya. On the earth, many animals walk, and they may all cause, they may run, they may stampede. So Mother Earth may feel lot of pain at the kind of effort that goes on from morning till evening. But she understands that is the nature of all the animals. In a similar way, a gnani or a person who comes to the truth will understand that pain and happiness keep alternating. That is the way, that is the nature of this. Like when I decided to do business, somebody told me, okay, till now you are earning, so you can't afford to lose. So somebody doesn't pay you salary, you quit the job, you look for another job. But moment you come into the realm of this doing business, be very clear. Like, since you have been earning money every month, you will be thinking that you should earn money every time. But in business, things may not go that way. You have to be ready to earn or to lose, because in business both are possible. So when you understand like that and approach something, you will not have much of pain coming out. So here Bhagavan is saying that is the way the world works, pain and pleasure, which keeps alternating. If you understand this and then indulge in the activities of the world, nothing should be really bothering you, touching you. One, yes, here intellectually nothing is touching. One also recognizes that the nature of the self is such, the pure being consciousness is not touched by anything. So one naturally understands that one's true natural state is that of indifference, one of towards pain and pleasure. And that is the real happiness. So Bhagavan here goes on to explain that it is necessary to learn how to remain imperturbable and accept suffering and pain with patience. So since that is the nature of the world and all the transitory thing, like Mother Earth, we have to understand, because that is the nature of it. So this pain and pleasure will come, suffering and pain will come. So we need to simply be patient and it will move away. So we should not get carried away either by the suffering and start crying about it, or become very egoistic about some pleasure that we experience, says Bhagavan here. So he goes on to say, he who dedicates himself to an activity must do so without being concerned about the results, and not let himself be dominated by the pain or pleasure that arises from time to time. So like a businessman is open to both profits and loss, Bhagavan is saying, if you are outward turn, indulging in activities, the activities will bring some result, and that result could be painful or pleasurable, but one should not be concerned about it, because that is transitory. That is the nature of the things, that it will be one time pleasure, sometimes you should not get carried away by either of them. So when one really starts looking at the nature of oneself as Satchidananda, that is where one understands that one is naturally indifferent. Because no matter what all things have happened from morning till evening, the self has no trace of it. When we sit down in meditation, when the self alone remains, when we enter the samadhi, we see that the self doesn't even know that it has a body, and that body is called Dileep, and it is a male, it is staying in Bangalore. No such trace, like in the deep sleep. So when we recognize our true nature as being equipoised, that is when Bhagavan is saying we can recognize that happiness is our natural state. With Bhagavan's immense grace, with which alone we have come to this most direct path, for the next 20 minutes, let us practice Atma Vichara. And in Bhagavan's Self-Enquiry, Bhagavan says, no matter how many thoughts come, whatever may be the nature of those thoughts, whether they are good thoughts, bad thoughts, ugly thought, or a spiritual thought, all of them are basically an object. And we recognize it is not only transitory, these objects, they can never bring continuous happiness. Therefore, we should inquire to whom is this? Recognize it is for me, and thereupon inquire who am I? This question, who am I, is not to be answered. It has to be investigated. What do I refer to as I within me? Or where from all these thoughts are rising within me? When we investigate to the source, then the attention which was outward turned goes back to the self, goes back to that true nature of ours. And by becoming acquainted with our true nature, we start to recognize that unalloyed happiness, that natural continuous happiness is our nature. Not only that, that alone actually exists. All other things which seemingly come and go are all transitory in nature and all imaginative in nature and really don't have its own existence. It is I who exists, and when I put my attention on these objects, I tell they exist. So naturally, they are not there. The truth is, one alone exists, one's own self alone exists, and that is naturally happy, naturally peaceful. That is what self-enquiry, Bhagavan says, makes us understand and recognize and further abide in that truth. Because even understanding, one lets go, because understanding the sweetness of sugar doesn't make us enjoy the sugar. So one will transit from viveka to nididhyasana, or real abidance. So that's what Bhagavan says. With Bhagavan's immense grace, for the next 20 minutes, let us practice Atma Vichara. Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramana. Namo Ramana. Thank you. Over to Sarada. Namo Ramana.
Namo Ramana. Just a minute. I'll just connect. Namo Ramana. Prostrations to Ramana. Shining is the self in all beings. By the immense grace of the self, manifest as Ramana, we in this part of the Satsang are meditating on the verses of Ramana Gita. And we are now on the last chapter of Ramana Gita, which is the 18th chapter, which is called the Siddha Mahimanu Kirtanam, the glory of the Siddhas. And first, the Muni, before asking the question, is actually the question in this chapter is asked by Amritanatha, and there's only one question. But before that question is asked, the Muni sings many verses of praise of Bhagavan. And we were meditating on the first verse, and the second verse goes like, the third verse goes, first two verses we meditated on, and the third verse goes like this. Akhila samshaya varana bhashanam brahmamadat viradankusha vikshanam aviratam parasaukya dhrutodhyamam aviratam parasaukya dhrutodhyamam nijatanu vishayeshvala salasam. Akhila samshaya varana bhashanam brahmamadat viradankusha vikshanam aviratam parasaukya dhrutodhyamam nijatanu vishayeshvala salasam. So, the Muni says, Bhagavan's words dispel all doubts. Bhashanam, the Bhashana of Bhagavan, the words of Bhagavan, Akhila Samshaya Varanam. So, all doubts are dispelled by Bhagavan's words. What are Bhagavan's words? Bhagavan's words, if we see, in his works, we have Bhagavan's words. That is the Upadesha Saram and the original Upadesha Undiyar, the Upadesha Saram in 3 languages. Then we have the Ulladu Narpadu. And we have also the records of Bhagavan's words, which are here in Ramana Gita. And there are Bhagavan's words in Guru Vachaka Kovai, which is recorded by Muruganar. These are verse records of Bhagavan's words. And then we have the prose records of Bhagavan's words, preeminent among them being talks with Sri Ramana Maharshi. And there are other such records, many such records. And looking at all this, Sri R. Natarajan said, Ramana Maharshi is said to be the silent sage, but really speaking, we find that he seems to have answered more than 30,000 questions. He put together all the question answers which are there, and he says he has answered so many questions. But in how many years? In 54 years. Bhagavan came to Arunachala in 1896 and he dropped his body in 1950. So 54 years he was in Arunachala. But till 1907, when Ganapati Muni came to him and surrendered to him, he did not speak publicly. He spoke very rarely, probably a little, to Palani Swami, who was his attendant. Otherwise, he did not speak at all. So, if we take out those 11 years from the 54 years, so we have 43 years. And in 43 years, even if you have 30 years, in 1 year, Bhagavan has answered 1,000 questions approximately, we can say. About 1 or 2 questions in a day will be the average. Maximum will be 3 questions in a day will be the average, the maximum. So, imagine Bhagavan is sitting there, but in later years, of course, the questions were more. But if we look at Bhagavan's the daily schedule even later, in Skandashramam itself, Vishwanatha Swami says Bhagavan's daily schedule, early morning, he was just seated, he would be lost in that, with a faraway look perhaps in his eyes, or sometimes his eyes might be closed. And Kunju Swami and others say, sometimes for hours in the evening, Bhagavan could not be woken up. But in the morning, he would keep somewhat of a schedule which was conducive to all the people. There was the morning Parayanam, and there would be the bhajans, and he would listen to them, and then they would all eat together. And later in the afternoon, Bhagavan would be seated there in the evening, where the Parayanam would happen. Whether they would have their second meal at all, they didn't know. Sometimes they may not have, because Bhagavan would not wake up. But when the doubt was asked, then Bhagavan would reply. That first reply which came, Muni is talking about the dispelling of all doubts by Bhagavan's words. And the first words which Muni heard from Bhagavan, which are practically the first words which Bhagavan spoke in public, were find out from where the I thought arises and merge at its source. Find out from where the I thought arises and merge at its source, that is tapas. Find out from where the source of the mantra nada arises. Find out the source from which the mantra nada, the sound of the mantra, arises, and merge at that source, that is tapas. And what happened for the Muni? When Bhagavan spoke these words, all his doubts were dispelled. All his doubts, meaning the very root doubt, what is tapas, which he had asked, that was completely dissolved for him. Actually, it is oft quoted of Swami Chinmayananda as to what is the speciality of Bhagavan answering doubts. Swami Chinmayananda is said to have answered, all other answers will solve the doubt, but Bhagavan dissolves the doubt. How does he dissolve the doubt? By dissolving the very doubter. In fact, Kapali Shastri, while asking Bhagavan questions or posing his doubts in front of Bhagavan, says, Bhagavan, don't use your Brahmastram. Please explain this and give me a solution for my doubt. Here in Ramana Gita, we find Muni is talking about Bhagavan dispelling all doubts, where? In the 18th chapter. After 17 chapters of question answers of Bhagavan, which he has recorded, then he says, Akhila Samshaya Varana Bhashanam. That is, it dispels all doubts, basically because Bhagavan's words take one back to the source of the very one who doubts. And when such happens, when one gets back to the source, then there can be no room for doubts anymore because the doubter would have disappeared. However, in this Ramana Gita, the Muni and his disciples have covered a wide spectrum of questions, of spiritual doubts which people could encounter on their path back to the self, in their journey, in their practice of self-knowledge and self-abidance. What all doubts could arise in a person's mind? All those have been practically covered by Bhagavan's words in the Ramana Gita. So, Muni is saying, Akhila Samshaya Varana Bhashanam. So, if we have any doubt about the practice of self-enquiry, if we have any doubt on any other subject also, we can find an answer in Bhagavan's words. This is what the Muni is telling us. There is no subject, there is no topic, though it may seem remote, for which we do not have Bhagavan's answer to some seeker or the other, taking the attention back to the source. Here, as I said, in Ramana Gita, 17 topics have been covered, actually 18, including the 18th chapter. 18 basic questions have been posed to Bhagavan, and related to that also other questions have been posed to Bhagavan, and Bhagavan has given answers which the Muni says are conclusive. No further doubt can remain on those subjects. But really speaking, Bhagavan clears all doubts by the experience of dipping within into the self. When one dips into the self, what happens? Then this false sense of I disappears, and there is no room for any doubt because the self is crystal clear. The self has nothing apart from it. When there is nothing apart from the self, who is to doubt what? So, by taking us back to the self and by showing us the clear path back to the self, Bhagavan destroys all our doubts. So we can pick up any word of Bhagavan, we can pick up any one sentence of Bhagavan, and that will lead us to the self, abidance in the self alone being perfect clarity, that alone being freedom from doubt. And then the Muni says, Brahmamada Viradankusha Vikshanam. What about his eyes? His words are dispelling all doubts, but what about his eyes? They destroy the mad elephant, or the elephant that is caught intoxicated. That elephant of the mind, that mother, that elephant filled with arrogance and caught in delusion, Brahma. For that elephant, what is Bhagavan's glance? It is Ankusha Vikshanam. Ankusha is the goad which alone they can stop the elephant. The Ankusha is also the one of the Ayudhas held by Gajaraja or Ganesha. So, Bhagavan's glance. Several devotees say that if we just keep looking at Bhagavan's eyes, That itself is a great sadhana. We can just simply sit down and look at Bhagavan's eyes, and that will turn our mind inwards, take it back to the source. Where from does Bhagavan get the power of his eyes? If we say it is from his mother, Meenakshi. In one of our dance dramas, we have a lyrical approach to Bhagavan's life, and there Bhagavan conquers death in Madurai, and his friends ask him, "Oh, Meenakshi has allowed you through her glance to conquer death. What are you going to give her in return?" So he says, "I am going to proclaim to the whole world the glory of her eyes." How am I going to proclaim it? By giving the Nayana Diksha. I have learned from her the Nayana Diksha, he says. It is said that there are 3 kinds of initiation given by the Sadguru, which is the Hasta Diksha, the Vak Diksha, the Sparsha Diksha. The Sparsha Diksha is the Hasta Diksha, the Nayana Diksha, which is through the eyes, and the Chinta Diksha, by thought. And the 3 instances which are given are that of the bird which sits on its egg and hatches it. That's the Sparsha Diksha. The Chinta Diksha is said to be that of the tortoise, which lays its eggs on the shore but comes into the ocean and keeps thinking about its young ones until they are hatched. And the Nayana Diksha is that of the fish, which just keeps looking at its eggs and then they hatch. So that powerful glance of Bhagavan also is something which Muni is constantly referring to. And it is something which is available to us. Numerous beautiful pictures of Bhagavan are there where we can see that magnificent, that alluring, that enchanting glance of Bhagavan. But what is the real glance of Bhagavan? Bhagavan says of Arunachala, "Kannukku kannai kannindri kaan." You are the eye of the eye. And you see without any eyes. So that eye of the eye, which is the inner eye of the self, that is Bhagavan. That is Bhagavan. That is Arunachala. And that alone destroys the ratting elephant called the mind. That alone has to rise up, as it were, and swallow this mind. When the mind dips inward in self-enquiry, the self rises up and envelops it and remains all-pervading, revealing itself as all-pervading. So that is the Vikshanam of Bhagavan. The self itself is his eye, is his kannu, and it itself is his I capital in English, the self. That glance of grace Bhagavan showers on us, says Muni. Om Namo Bhagavate Shri.
Namo Ramana. Apara Satchit Sukavaridashe Yasyormimatram Bhuvanam Samastam Guhahitam Tam Ramanam Gabhiram Chintavihinam Hrudi Chintayami Chintavihinam Hrudi Chintayami. Namo Ramana to all.
Namo Ramana Devi.